BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
You're listening to Live Wires from BBC Radio 5 Live.
What is the alternative to telling someone to man up? Now, this may seem like an innocuous phrase that we all understand as meaning be resilient. But is there a darker side to telling men to man up? Callum, you have a different idea of what the term man up means. And what do you think it means?
For many years now, I have been trying to, go through a grieving process, you go through an anger process in certain times in life when me, for example, I'll use a unique scenario where you lose somebody, but a lot of people lose somebody. And I felt once I started opening up about these things that I found a lot of people through maybe my social media and the platform I have were reaching out saying, we appreciate you opening up. And when you start to open up, you start to find answers and help and all these things that kind of help you become a better person or heal or move on in your life, so you're not stuck with all these things on the inside that could affect you long term. So for quite a good few years now, I've been doing talks and I've been going on the news and I've been going here and there talking about, I think people should be more open to let men express their thoughts and their feelings in order to heal themselves. I'm coming from a very holistic approach of wanting to be better and feel better and heal yourself in life. But when you say things like, the Anthony Joshua manning up, I get that. I mean, who wouldn't want to? And we were discussing before we went on air, there's certain times where you have to man up. There's a role that we all want to play, including myself. You want to be the man in the family. You want to provide. You want to do these things. But what my big message is, and it's been a really, really passionate one of mine, is trying to let other, whether it be young people or adults, know that it's okay to not man up, to do better in your life, really. So
Okay.
that's the goal today. That's what I wanted to put to your listeners. I wanted to put to your listeners, my question would be, what is the alternative to telling someone to man up? Because people are still trying to come to terms with it. Is it okay to ask that question? And I think it is.
What is the alternative to telling someone to man up? If you've got sons, do you use that term? Have you used that term? Do you think there's something potentially destructive in that? Or do you think actually there's something that is positive in that? It talks about resilience. It talks about having to be stoic. I mean, we've just commemorated anniversaries of young men going to war and then coming back from war and by and large being told that they never spoke about it.
Yeah.
They never spoke about what they went through. And some argue that that is a very bad thing. They spent decades suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and never dealt with it. Others just learnt to live with it.
Yeah.
And that was perhaps one of the qualities that they passed on to say, look, rather than keep complaining about everything, keep crying about everything, having to be vulnerable all the time, there's times in a tough world, and we live in a tough world.
Without a doubt.
Right?
Yeah.
Where we have to be men. 08085 909 693 if you want to answer Callum's question, and also as well just kind of relate to us what you think when you hear that term man up, whether you see it as positive or whether you see it as negative. Text 85058. You can also tweet us at BBC5 Live, email nihal@bbc.co.uk. I mean, for you, Callum, and this is not going to be an hour about we discussing your father.
No, yeah,
okay.
But I've done plenty of hours of that.
Exactly. In therapy and on TV and radio, I can imagine. But your father was, to many of that generation, the epitome of being a man.
Yeah.
Right? Footballer, women, money, success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have him as your role model, as perhaps the sole example of what being a man is. Now, what effect did that have on you and your ideas of what being a man is?
We could be here for 5 hours discussing this, but what I'll try to do is break it down into kind of short terms. My old man was the epitome of a Northern Irish old school man that kept himself to himself, never expressed the love, never expressed the I love you, and never. I remember one time, this is a bit controversial, I remember one time something happened in a pub, and I remember the police came, and it was a real case of don't say anything. And I was only 15 at that point. I go, ooh, that's a perfect example of manning up. You don't say anything to the police, right? And it made me start thinking as I got older, I've been trained for generations, his generations behind him and behind him and behind him, all kept themselves to themselves, and it all sadly didn't end very well for him. Obviously, my dad was an iconic footballer. I'm one of his biggest fans ever, but I lost my old man to alcohol. And what happened to me then, as his next generation, was I kept all this anger inside. I kept all this confusion inside, all this kind of grieving inside, and it messed me up so bad for years because I didn't know where to turn to. I didn't know who to talk to. But as soon as I started to open up and express myself and talk about the process of losing somebody or the problems that came with alcohol in the family, or, you know, going through things that weren't easy to go with, I found that I was able to deal with all those things better. And my life started to get better and better and better. So I started to use the platform that I have to tell other people that were going through the same thing, why don't you try doing this? Why don't you turn to that charity and go express your thoughts and your feelings? Oh, you're struggling at home? Call somebody, talk about it. Doesn't matter what age you are. There is no problem with opening up to, you know, evolve and heal and grow as a person. Like I said, today I come to you from a very, you know, holistic healing approach. I'm not talking about a fighter. I'm not talking about, you know, so much respect to everybody that went to war. And, you know, you can't question it because it's done now, but you would think to yourself, what if some of those men, when they came back, thought it was okay to open up and express the troubles that they're dealing with, to live a better what was left of their life, you know?
Were you destined to live a same life of internalizing everything until you made a decision, or do you think it was inevitable because you're a different generation that you would have opened up?
I think it's a different time now, you know, and I'm very careful when I say this because, you know, there's an age of millennial where a lot of people expect things done and there's real quick access and there's real easy stuff done, and a lot of people don't want to work hard, you know? So there's a real borderline of what is right and wrong. But I just felt like, you know, for so long, there's been kind of this real attitude of do not express thoughts as a man. And I understand it, but if a man...
Is it thoughts or weakness?
No, I don't think...
Express thoughts,
I don't...
not weakness.
Well, what is weakness, though? I don't think it's weak if you say, I'm struggling, or weak if you say, I need help.
But that was regarded to be weak.
Yeah, big time.
That's the thing.
And I'm happy. You know what? I'm quite an emotional dude. I'm quite soft, but at the same time, you know, I go out, I drink beers, I play football, I like women. You know what I mean? All the things that my dad loved, I love too. But at the same time, you know, if it's going to stop me from, sadly, let's say, dying too young or having problems for the next 20 years.
Or not being emotionally available to your partner.
Anyone.
Kids.
Yeah. If it means that I'm able to express myself now and try to help people, to not to say I'm some guru, but really I am some guru with all the stuff I've been through. And if I can use my experiences and my examples to show people, look, I opened up and it's led to me now at 38 being the most comfortable, confident, happy man I could be, you know, compared to however many years ago. Some of it is age. You evolve and you grow and you learn how to cope with different things. But I feel now, you know, with everything that's going on, I've got friends that have committed suicide. I've got friends that are, you know, struggling so bad. And I'm like, no, you should be able to express who you are, no matter if you're a man or not, to try to live a better life.
Aren't we, though, as men now, given so many contradictory suggestions as to who we should be?
Yeah.
So this is an aspect of your toxic masculinity. This is an aspect of you being destructive, or but there are parts of us as men that just want to be men.
Yeah.
Right? And do you feel that we live in a confusing time where we're in this place where perhaps our fathers knew exactly the role that was expected of them, and it was simple for them to carry out that role?
Stuck with it.
And they stuck with it.
Yeah.
Right? Are we in a transition period, whereas men, we don't know what the expectation of us is? Because I like being a guy.
Yeah.
Like, I like being a geezer guy.
Me too.
You know, I like to watch football. I like to watch boxing. I like to hang out with my guys. I like to do all that stuff.
Yeah. I don't think we are confused. I just think now, if ever, why not? If it's on the table and if it's more open than it's ever been, we can still be guys that like girls, guys that like lads trip, guys that like football. But if ever a point we needed to turn to one of our best mates and say, are you okay? Are you really okay? Yeah. He should be able to say, no, I'm not. And let's find a way to fix this. I did this thing just a few days ago called the Man Talk, and it was in Brixton. It was 200 guys from Brixton and just 4 of us men on stage. There was myself and a life coach, and some people might not understand that, but a guy that would help people if they needed help. A guy named Yanni and another guy from podcast. Anyway, so there's 4 of us on the panel, and there's 200 men in the audience, and it was one of the most rewarding, mind-blowing experiences I've ever been through, because you've got men of all different races, colors, nationalities, whatever it may be, and they all sit there and they all had the same objective, that they were struggling with some point at somewhere in their life. And these were some hard men, you know. Somebody walked up and he was a 6'7" unit, right? And within 3 seconds he was crying. And I thought to myself, damn, that guy needs help, you know? And if he can come to this room of all these kind of lads, and we can not put everything else down around us, but to try to explain what are some of the problems we're going through and what are some of the answers we could find. And I can only see that movement growing. And I will happily take the forefront of it, because I've been through the struggle, and everybody's been through the struggle. And I'm not trying to say, one thing I remember somebody saying was just because one person is missing 2 legs and one person is missing 1 leg, it doesn't mean the person with 1 leg doesn't have a right to tell his story, right? You still have a right to express what you're going through and who you are, if it means that it's going to heal you and the others around you. And something that really struck me there is that if our goal in life as men is to want to take care of those around us, yeah, our family, our loved ones, and everything, but we have to be not at a small cupful. We have to be close to a full cupful. And if it means that we have to express who we are and what we're going through to fill up our cup, to then give 100% to our loved ones, there's nothing wrong with that.
So many texts coming in already. 85058. And I do apologise, actually, because at the beginning of this I asked about fathers and what they tell their sons, but I'm very interested in what mothers say.
Yeah, of course.
And what sisters say.
Yeah, of course.
To their sons and to their brothers about this term man up and what it means to you. Ed Gray has said, saying man up isn't the problem, it's what you mean by it. We should reclaim the word and use it to mean being the best member of mankind we can be, not a saying that means a stiff upper lip or don't cry, which it so often does, but instead manning up should mean raising your game.
Exactly.
But the thing with that is, though, there is a time for us as men, and indeed women, to not cry, to actually stand up and say, well, at this moment in time, I need to be so... Just a very micro example from my own life. Recently, my dog had seizures, and we thought the dog was going to die. And that dog is a family member to us, and we were all in the car. It happened when we were driving in the car. And my kids are crying in the back. My wife is crying inside. I'm devastated. But I didn't cry because I looked at them and I felt that they needed me to not be that guy.
Like, you start bawling and it's a chain effect.
Well, there you go. But they kind of, your children look to you. And in many ways, my wife looked to me to be steady and to be calm and say, okay, we need to do this. We need to call a vet. We need to find out where we can go. We were in the middle of the Lake District and to find somewhere to go. And that, to me, was an example of manning up.
Well, I suppose that is a perfect example. And there's different levels to this thing, right?
Of course.
That is a level of maybe you shouldn't have cried there. Maybe it is a time to go, okay, if I need to do this right now for my kids and my family and show we can handle this, then you do it, right? And that's where with that gentleman that just wrote in now, it's a kind of good example of saying, be the best man you could be. And right there, you think being the best man is leading by example. And that's perfectly fine. I suppose like I said already, my approach is more of to make sure you're okay in life, to make sure you live the best life you can do. You need to do what you need to do to evolve and grow. I'm so much about this growth mindset thing and using different tools to do it. And if one of those tools is opening up, expressing your thoughts and your feelings, I think you should be able to do it.
But I mean, how difficult is it to do that in environments which are brutal?
Tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So in an environment,
it took me years to cry.
Right.
You know, and I can't even remember the last time I did. You know, I remember that example you just gave there. Last Christmas, I was with my mom, and my mom's the kind of only family I've got. And there's this real feeling I've had for years of the protector, the provider. I want to pay the rent. I want to make sure whatever it is, she's living a happy life. She's the only woman I have in my life, the only family I have in my life. And I'm standing there at Christmas, and it's her and I in the kitchen, and we're discussing things. And I could tell she wasn't quite happy about something, and something in me wanted to cry yet, but I didn't, because I thought if I show her I'm upset, it's going to make her upset, and then the whole thing is going to unfold. So there's times like that where you go, no, I'm a man, I'm going to man up, I'm going to show her, it's going to be okay, we're going to do this together. So it just depends on where you're at and what the scenario is. But for me, you know, it's been a driving force of mine with a platform like the social media I have to influence well, to show a generation that, yes, okay, there's times to be a man, there's times to do what you need to do to make sure everybody's taken care of and provided for. But if you are struggling to be that guy, or you're struggling with your own personal demons, you should be able to reach out to somebody or turn to somebody and look for help.
Do you tell your mates you love them? Male friends?
I mean, like, probably not, no.
Right.
Well, I mean, you might slap each other high five, love you, brother, Right. But you wouldn't sit down deep, look in the eye and be like, I love you, because there's... for me, I've got 3 friends on my hand, There's 3 people in my life that I consider and I would do anything for. So there's already an underlying knowledge of that, right? If it needed to be said, if one of my mates looked at me and was like, I am struggling, I'd be like, let's find help here, yeah? But most men don't turn and say that thing when they should be allowed to, I think. It's not an easy thing to do. I had a conversation with the author, an unbelievable author, Howard Jacobson, and he was talking about this with his dad. And I said, would you have ever said, I love you to your dad? And he said, no. Like his dad, I mean, Howard Jacobson is probably in his 70s, and he said that his dad would have looked at him like, are you mad? Yeah. What are you doing? Yeah. And he would have felt super uncomfortable to say that. Yeah. It was the same thing with my dad. My dad never said to me, I love you. Did you ever say it to him? Yeah, but I would say it to him reaching for it as well, And I did the same thing. I sat down. And there would be no answer. No, because he was an old school Irishman. He would sit at the end of the bar with his dry white wine. Like, I remember one time I was like 15. It was the first time we ever got to kind of relate with each other. I'd come over from the US and I was in the UK, and we were in the bar together. And I'm like, oh, this is my moment. This is my moment. I said, Dad, can I go get a drink? He said, yeah, of course you can, son. Yeah. So I've gone to the bar, ordered my drink, and I've come back with this pina colada with a straw and a pineapple on an umbrella. And he goes, you're not sitting me with that drink, son. And I was like, oh, I've messed it up. I'm not man. I was in front of George. I was 15, but at that point you go, okay, dry neat whiskey from here on out. Yeah. Right. Okay. But at the time, you do whatever you needed to do to relate, and then you realize, okay. Did that crush you? No, I just made me go, ooh, big mistake. Never have a pina colada again. Yeah, don't do that one again. Have you drunk any pina coladas? Unless you're with your missus on holiday in the Bahamas or something. Yeah. In the current world of diversity and equality and sensitivity, is man up an outdated term, asked this texter? Should we now say human up? Rich in Barry in South Wales said, I prefer to use step up rather than man up. It has same sense of needing to raise your game without being gendered. Yeah. Which is a really good way of looking at this. Callum, repeat the question for us, please. So originally my question was, why is it not okay to man up? But we've come to this one. My question is, what's the alternative to telling someone to man up? And what does it mean to you? Is it wrong? Is it right? I'm here to say I think it's okay for people to not man up, because when I hear man up said a lot, it means like handle it. And I will say it makes sense, because if it's manageable, you manage. If you can do it, do it. But if you need help, you should be able to open up, not have to man up. Okay, 32 minutes past 1. Do get in contact with us. Tell us your thoughts on this phrase, man up, and whether you think it is outdated, whether you believe that there is an alternative to it, and whether you think perhaps there's nothing wrong with saying man up, because you may see a meaning in it which says something different. It's not about hiding your feelings. It is about, perhaps, if you say to someone who's been criticised, man up, take the criticism, move on, then that's a positive thing. Yeah. But if you say man up as soon as you see your kid cry, for instance, because they've just lost the football game, don't do that. Don't do that. Then what? God, who did I interview once, and he said that his father ran on to the middle of the pitch, he was an American, and slapped him in front of the team when he started to cry. Brutal. Because he'd lost something, and told him never to do that again. Yeah. How can that be good? Is that something that is now gone? I mean, if you go and watch your kids play football or rugby or cricket or whatever every weekend, do you see dads like this? Or is that a thing of the past? Is it a different generation? Like I said, 85058 is the text number. Give us a call. Mums or dads, we want to hear from you. Yeah. Sisters or brothers, we want to hear from you. 08085 909 693 is the number. Right, 33 minutes past 1. It's time for the news headlines with Sarah Green.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Researchers in Britain and Canada say vaccination against the human papillomavirus, which causes almost all cervical cancers, is having a major impact. Vaccinations against it began more than a decade ago and rates have fallen significantly. RAF Typhoons was scrambled to escort a passenger plane into Stansted Airport this morning following a security alert. The Air India flight from Mumbai landed after the report of a bomb threat. Theresa May says her successor should put their Brexit plan to the test in the Commons rather than suspend Parliament to force through a no deal. She's also indicated she wouldn't automatically back the Brexit strategy chosen by her replacement. And temperatures across France, Spain and Switzerland are expected to peak above 40 Celsius today as a heatwave continues to affect large parts of Europe. Forecasters say it's down to hot air being drawn in from northern Africa. Let's get the sport now. Here's Shojo.
Well, at the Men's Cricket World Cup, it's India versus the West Indies at Old Trafford, and just a few minutes ago, this huge wicket.
Holder, 1 for 28 in the 9th over ball, short and pulled in the air and caught. Caught in two minds was Virat Kohli. Slower delivery, it looked like, from Jason Holder. He was almost into the pull too early and offers a simple catch. Hands to the head from thousands of Indian fans.
Well, the India captain there, Kohli, gone for 72. They are struggling. Nikesh Rugani has the latest.
Yes, up until that point, they just put on 40 runs, MS Dhoni and Virat Kohli together at the crease. But as you say, a huge blow to the Indian hopes there. Hardik Pandya has come to the crease. He's unbeaten on 5. MS Dhoni is unbeaten on 18. And the West Indies, well, they'll feel that they're in the driving seat at the moment. India 186 for 5 in the 41st over.
There's a commentary of India-West Indies on 5 Live Sports Extra right now. In-play highlights also for you on the BBC Sport website. One other line of cricket. The West Indies cricketing great Sir Everton Weekes is in intensive care. He suffered a heart attack overnight in Barbados. He's well known for being one of the 3 Ws, alongside Sir Frank Worrell and Sir Clyde Walcott. The Women's Football World Cup takes centre stage on 5 Live this evening as England play Norway in Le Havre for a place in the semi-finals. The Norwegians are without the World Player of the Year, Arda Hegerberg, who is in self-imposed exile over equality issues within football in Norway. Well, England have their own special striker in Ellen White. She scored 4 goals so far in France this tournament. Here's her manager, Phil Neville.
I've not seen anyone better in the tournament, and I think now what you're seeing a player playing at the absolute maximum of her potential and ability and confidence and belief. 4 goals with the left foot now, and that's a weaker foot. So I dread to think when she starts kicking with the right.
European champions Liverpool have a new boy. 17-year-old central defender Sepp Vandenberg's arrived from the Eredivisie side Zwolle for £1.3 million. Chelsea are expected to complete a £40 million permanent signing of Mateo Kovacic. David Turnbull's move to the Scottish champion Celtic is off. That's after the midfielder failed a medical. Don't hear that too often. Old Firm rivals Rangers have signed Joe Aribo from the championship club Charlton Athletic. In tennis, Britain's Liam Brodie is level at 2-all against Gregoire Barrère in their final qualifying match for the main draw at Wimbledon. Elsewhere, Eastbourne continues, where John Southall is watching 2 Grand Slam champions facing off in the women's quarterfinals.
I am, and it's a good start for the Wimbledon champion Angelique Kerber. She broke Simona Halep in the 3rd game of the first set and is looking fairly comfortable on the Eastbourne grass. She leads by 5 games to 4 and is currently just serving for the first set. Earlier on, Sam Querrey beat Fernando Verdasco 7-6, 6-2, belying the 43 places that separate them in the world rankings. And Ons Jabeur came from a set down to beat Elise Cornet 1-6, 7-5, 6-3, and that was after a lengthy injury when she turned her ankle. But she goes through, and remember, 4 o'clock this afternoon, Kyle Edmund versus Dan Evans replacing the semis. It will be after 4 o'clock actually this afternoon. And here on centre court at the moment, Angelique Kerber just serving for the first set, 5-4.
John, thank you. The England Rugby Union head coach Eddie Jones will coach the Barbarians against Fiji at Twickenham in November. It'll come just 2 weeks after the World Cup final. England's training camp, meanwhile, for that tournament started earlier this week. Fly half Danny Cipriani is among those to be added to the group tomorrow. And Muirfield Golf Club has formally invited 12 women to join the club. It comes 2 years after agreeing to admit female members for the first time. That's the latest from BBC Sport.
The FIFA Women's World Cup continues on 5 Live and across the BBC.
Dug into Horton, into the net! Bottom corner from the England captain!
Tonight
tonight, England take on Norway in the quarter-finals. Hear live commentary from 8, right here on 5 Live. Tony Duggan sends it in and it's hit brilliantly. And it comes for the number 3, Alex Greenwood.
The FIFA Women's World Cup on BBC Radio 5 Live.
First for news and the best live sport. This is BBC 5 Live. Nihal Arthanayake.
And the texts are flowing in about this conversation that you have started, Calum Best, here on 5 Live. And it's about this phrase, man up, and whether we should find an alternative to it, or whether you think it still fulfills a purpose to tell your kids to man up, to tell your friends to man up, for Jeremy Hunt to tell this week Boris Johnson to man up. 08085 909 693 is the number, or you can text 85058. You can also send me an email, nihal@bbc.co.uk. Now, joining me with Calum Best is Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz. He's a coach, consultant and guru of all things men, also known as the Man Whisperer. Kenny, hi.
Hey.
Good to have you here.
Pleasure.
Great to have you here. And Latala Mohammed is here, Taekwondo double Olympic medalist, winning bronze at London in 2012 and silver at Rio in 2016. And he has taken a break from training for Tokyo next year just to come and hang out with us. So Latala, it's always great to see you.
No, welcome, gents. Thank you for coming on with us.
Great to have you both here. Latala, I want to start with you because quite famously, you know, you expressed your emotions to the world when you just so narrowly missed out on that gold medal in Rio.
Yeah.
What do you think about that moment when you did burst into tears? You know, it was, the emotion of it was so much for you.
You just said it there, the emotion of it just kind of overtook everything. I mean, to set the context, obviously I'd been training for this one thing my entire life. Even when I set the goal of becoming an Olympic champion when I was 9 years old, me and my dad, we did the calculations and worked out 2016, that Olympics, wherever it's going to be, I'd be approaching my prime years, and that's the time to go win a gold medal. So all of that had gone into it, all that training, all that thinking,
expectation.
Expectation, meditation on it, and it was just about to happen. I had my fingertips around my life kind of goal, my biggest ambition in the sports world, and just like that, it got taken away from me. And 90 seconds later, I was doing an interview. So the outpour of emotion was just the most natural thing.
Of course.
Were you brought up in a household where it would have been natural?
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you
not.
were in combat sports?
Exactly. And it was my dad that taught me how to fight. So you can imagine, we're a very loving household, but it's not the I love you, lovey-dovey. It's not. It wasn't like that.
It sounds like that's the ongoing thing for everybody from a generation of ours. There was no "I love you too" scenarios. You know.
No. I mean, I was hearing what you're saying just now about your dad, and I was saying about saying I love you too, especially our dads.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking like, oh my gosh, wow,
can't remember a time.
Exactly. And I love my dad. My dad loves me. He's giving me everything I know. I make my livelihood of what my dad taught me, but it wasn't like that. So for that to happen in front of millions of people live, you know, BBC Olympics, I was just as surprised as everybody else, because believe it or not, I've not shared this too much, but I think as an adult man, I think I've only cried 3 times. I'm 28 now, so I'm still pretty young, but one of them just happened to be in front of millions of people.
But I can imagine people would understand why it happened then and there. You know, they can know you've worked your whole life for that in a combat sport, especially, and it probably would have never been the norm for you to do. And then all of a sudden, these thoughts and these feelings and these emotions of being so close to that thing, and then you're allowed to. I think
exactly, and that's kind of the point I want to get across, is that, you know, if it can happen to me, and it's definitely okay.
Yeah. Have you been told to man up?
Absolutely. Yeah. My whole life, my whole career. This is combat sports. Man up, sucking on that gum shield, bite down, keep on fighting.
But was that a bad thing?
Absolutely not. It made me the champion I am today. And it helped condition the mindset of when we get into deep, dark waters, especially in a combat situation, where I'm able to dig deep and I'm able to use that same thing in real life, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's business, whether it's motivating people. I feel like that has taught me something extremely valuable. However, I think we need to kind of add to the word man up, because ultimately manning up is dealing with your problems. And if your problems are up here, if they're mental, dealing with them, that's manning up. Handling your business, taking care of yourself, that's manning up.
Kenny,
that's being a man.
Kenny, oh, go on, Callum.
Just to add to that, I completely agree with that, because where I'm coming from with this whole thing is actually of a place of trauma, right? I'm coming from a place where if something happens to you that could affect you badly mentally, and you could either have a choice of holding on to that and not evolving and not growing and struggling for the rest of your life, or expressing what you're going through to find help and find answers to live a happier, healthier life, that's when you shouldn't have to man up. But if you use the word man up, then it is manning up by expressing yourself.
Absolutely.
Kenny, can I bring you in at this point to just ask you a question of, are we in danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater? When we're trying to dismiss this term of man up, there are positives, as Latalo's just pointed out, to that term. It allowed him to become an Olympic champion.
Totally. The term that I generally use is man up and talk about it. It's not man up with a stiff upper lip. And it's the same with the boys don't cry. Boys don't cry, but men do. This is an expression of authentic adulthood, of emotion. And it needs to be demonstrated to the children, because otherwise we all become surviving machines rather than real, authentic people that can think and that can feel. And maybe an alternative to man up would be what's up, because you're asking someone how they are.
I feel strange that what benefit is it to our children? What benefit is it to my son? And if you're listening and you have a son, for him to see me cry? Because for me and my father, I'm not sure I wanted to see him cry.
I think it depends on timing. So maybe if you demonstrate that when there's danger, you hold it together and everyone's safe. But as soon as it's past...
Oh, if I'm watching The Lion King. I'm in peace.
Bambi, yeah?
I'm in peace.
Oh, you know, that remake's going to get me, you know. I already know. I'm going to be in the corner of the cinema. Sorry.
But it's so healthy, because otherwise the kids are taught to be like you, which is never show emotion, never have a row, never this, that and the other, suppress. And when there's too much suppression, that's when there's depression, or strange behavior, or addiction, or whatever way it needs to kind of like spill over unhealthily. The danger with what's up is that the person who's asking needs to be able to receive the information and feel their own emotions. And if it's, I feel really bad, I feel really depressed because of this, that and the other, then whoever's in the conversation needs to be able to gain access to their own feelings to allow that person to meet them there. Or, exactly as Callum says, let's find some help, someone that can meet you in that depth of feeling. Because it's fine to say men need to talk and men need to express their emotions, etc. But the issue is with who? Who can meet this? Who can hear it? Who can receive it? And who can say, this is what I did, this is how I responded, and this is how I went through it and came out at the other side healthy.
And Kenny, that's exactly how this whole thing stemmed for me, was a case of when I lost my old man. All the years before that of having alcohol in the family and all the troubles that came with it, I never expressed my thoughts, never expressed my feelings, and it ate away at me. It took from my old man to pass away, and then 3 or 4 years, I went through the same downward spiral and masked my pain with drinking drugs or whatever it may be. But as soon I did a documentary actually for the BBC, and it changed my life. I traveled around the UK, I met charities, I met alcoholic families, I met kids going through the same thing with me. And as soon as you found some relative ground that you could talk and understand each other and realize that you were all going through the same thing, the healing process began.
Exactly. Worth its weight in gold, because it's someone like you that can say, this has been my journey. And this is how I've walked my path and I've come through, and now I'm passing it on. And I'm guessing that when you went through your troubles, you didn't really have people that you could open up to, that could receive you and help you through it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have self-medicated.
Yeah.
So then, Latalo, have you managed to compartmentalise? So there's the man up who is the Taekwondo Olympic
the bad boy
medalist. Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't mess around with him.
Look at that. Here he comes. Here he is. Look, watch that swagger. And then there's the guy that, he's going to watch a film and it'll have a sad bit in it. And will you feel comfortable about that emotionally affecting you? Or does what goes on in your professional life inevitably affect how you react in your personal life?
I think what goes on in my professional life has actually helped what's gone on in my personal life. For example, we use the Olympics. Hugely upsetting moment, which was expressed on camera to millions of people. But because I expressed it, because I got it out. Listen, I'll be real. I was partying that night. It was the Olympic Village. Yeah. I mean, come on, tall, handsome man like myself. You know what I'm about. I know what I'm about.
I know what you're working with. I know what you're working with. I know what you're working with. I know what you're working with.
But back to the point. And lessons like that have taught me that, when you get disappointments in the real world, when things don't go your way, which happens a lot, because in this thing called life, that it is much better to express yourself and get it out and be honest about your feelings so you can move on as quickly as possible.
I'll say, I think that makes you even more of a positive role model for people to show them that you have trained and worked your whole life for this moment, and you've obviously got a discipline that a lot of people aspire to have, and that when it didn't go how you wanted it to, that you were able to show emotion. So you show both sides of the story. You show that you could work and grind and dig deep and chew that fight guard, but then when you have to express your emotions of how upsetting it made you, you cried and you got it out. And I think people will look at that and see both sides of the story.
Absolutely.
Kenny, what do you think of Jordan B. Peterson's work, 12 Rules for Life, when he is talked about, the book is called An Antidote to Chaos, and that how rather than this kind of striving for happiness, what we should be doing is making ourselves resilient enough to deal with the inevitable pain that life will bring. There is not a single one of us here who has not been through a bereavement, a loss, pain, and that we need to equip ourselves from that. And is there a worry that if we're being told to constantly be vulnerable, we are not giving ourselves the chance to build up a resilience?
Do you know, I really believe there's a time and a place for everything. And when emotion comes up, it needs to be felt and it needs to pass. And rather than suppressing it and avoiding it, it's a matter of going through it and coming out the other end better. And sadly, there are so many choices these days of avoiding pain, avoiding fear, avoiding this, that and the other. They're all part of the human condition. Yeah. So sure, we're going to feel all these things, but I think the most important thing, especially for the male to remember, is that all things will pass. Joy will pass, fear will pass, change will pass, where it's so easy with the male mind to want to fix things or obsess about things or second guess things and then manipulate around them and put on a good show. And I'd say the difference
between... You can't
between...
fix everything.
Exactly.
If you see men who perhaps lose their job and they can't provide. And one of the things about not being able to provide, or indeed if you can't start a family and you're a man, and those things that emasculate you, you feel as though you can't.
Definitely.
And this is
because
where...
society also tells us that we must be a provider or we must bear children. Those kinds of things that we're presented with.
Yeah. And I think the first step surely has to be accept what is. Because it is, it's true. And for me, the next step as a man rather than a boy is to know how to respond, or even to find out how other men have responded, where a boy would react. It would come from fear, it would come from fixing, and the ability to respond. And for me, the difference between a man and a boy is a man includes the feminine aspects, which is listening, collaborating, and responding, rather than just fixing and competing and reacting. One comes from fear, the other one includes love.
Well, let's speak to Nick from Oxford, who got in contact with us, who's a mum to a son and a daughter. Nick, hello.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great that you got in contact with us.
I'm finding this fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
Good. What are your thoughts on the phrase "man up," considering you have a son and a daughter?
The reason I phoned in is because my daughter, I'm in my mid-40s, so I'm kind of, I'm seeing a lot of change than how it was, say, when I was a kid. but my daughter plays football, my son plays football, rugby, all the rest of it, and she's actually been told to man up. And I didn't even know really I didn't even know she was going to know what that actually meant. And I think the point is that in our house we don't really know what that actually means, because we have to treat everybody equally, and we get that older people, because I have to say it is, in our experience, tends to be older people that are now saying things like man up, but it just has no substance. I mean, it for us it's just be the best you can be strong. If you have a problem, we'll talk to you equally. But when I heard her getting her coach, for example, when she fell over, whatever, man up, he probably thought he was saying the right thing, but it was perplexing in that moment.
Yeah. So is this a grandparents' generation for your kids? That would be more. I'm not having a go at your own parents in this respect.
No, I just think that I mean, if I heard man up now, I think there'd be a few raised eyebrows, which I think is the point of the phone-in so much as Jeremy Hunt has said it, and there's a few raised eyebrows. And, you know, Callum's obviously mentioned it because it's kind of becoming a little bit old hat. But the sentiment is still there. You know, how do we respond when our children, and it is about the children, it's about, you know, the future of them. And I don't think it's a gender specific thing. Be your best, and, you know, be as strong as you can be as kind as you can be as fulfilled as you can be, and it's up to me to steer them in that direction. And if they've got a problem, whether they're man, boy, child, you know, you can always come to me. But I appreciate that I think things are a bit better, in inverted commas, now. I think the fact that we're even talking about this is amazing. I cannot think that 20, 30 years ago we'd be having this chat.
No, exactly. And that's why I think it's so important, because there's a transitional period here now where it needs to shed the old school idea of what man up is. It can be the best you can be. It can be do the best you can be. It can dig deep and do what you need to do. But I'm trying to say that the old school, going back to my dad and his past and the behind him, now is more the time than ever to break the cycle and say, no, you don't have to be like suppressed.
I completely agree. There are times where my son and my daughter are having a bad day, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to turn around and say, well, now you need to be the best you could be. They don't want to be the best they can be today. They're just in a dark place, so I need to come over to that place and go, hey, what's up? Can I help you? You may not want me to. It's not about saying you have to be better than yourself today.
Right.
Because you don't have to be.
Well,
you are allowed not to be.
Nick, can I just read this text out to you, and in fact to everybody here, and see what you think? But I'll start with you, Nick. This text came in and say, I have two boys who both play football, and the amount of toxic masculinity I see on display is shocking. Dads yelling at their children, the children looking bewildered and confused. One coach yelled at the children to man up when they were losing.
Every week.
There was also the coach who told them to stop playing like a girl. There was a girl on the team who turned round to the coach and pointed out she was a girl, and what he said was rude. I love that.
And you know, and that's the thing, you know, you said to me before about the old school. I'm not being funny, but I think there was a generation where you throw like a girl was a really bad thing. My daughter can out-throw my son. Things are shifting, but in context of what we're speaking about, we hear that a lot.
I don't think
we still hear that a lot.
Nick and Latala, I wonder if you can perhaps back me up on this, and Kenny as well, actually, is that we're children of immigrants, and it's almost as if immigrants didn't have the luxury of having the choice to kind of go, we'll need to show your emotions. They just worked every hour they could to try and make place in this country. And sometimes when I think about the fact my dad never told me he loved me, I just think, well, that was perhaps a luxury he couldn't afford.
It's true.
Right? I don't know about, you know, your dad, it had gone back generations and generations, but, you know, the immigrant story was such that, you know, for a lot of people, we didn't see our parents. They were out just working out.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe your dad not telling you that in his own way, he was telling you to man up. He was toughening you up.
But the magic of that, magic of that, and you've already said this, Todd, the magic of it was I knew he did.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. Like, I tell my kids every day I love them.
Yeah.
And I will too. When I have
And you know what?
That's why I think this. So sorry, please go ahead.
It's great that we're safe enough to be able to do this, because spot on. My family are refugees from Uganda. We had the Secret Service after us. There was no space to sit around crying. We were surviving. And it was not safe to ask, how are you? And to open up, because if one broke, we might have all broken. And that would be emotionally, in our minds, the end. So we have the luxury to ask, how are you? And sometimes we need the space for things to come and be felt and clear, so we're free to be authentic people.
Callum.
And I think that's why everybody's situation is unique. I could say the same thing about having alcohol in the family. All I want to do is pass on the message now to any men that are listening. My goal coming in here today was to say, if you need to open up and talk to somebody, whether it be your friend, counselor, charity, whoever it may be, to do better and feel better, in return take care and provide for your family, please do it to help yourself.
Yeah.
What an amazing hour this has been. Good grief, you're right. We could have done this for 5 hours. Calum Best, thank you. Balatali Mohammed, back to the training, my friend.
Yes.
I want to see your hands on that gold medal.
Oh, man, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it.
But no stress. Kenny, thank you very much as well, indeed, for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Superb.